ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति 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 Namaskar, dear friends. Today I am going to give you a very important video on a very important topic, spiritual instruction by Maharshi Ramana. So these are in the form of questions and answers. Question says, what are the marks of a real master? That is, we call as Guru. Answer is steady abidance in the self, looking at all with an equal eye, unshakable courage at all times, in all places and circumstances, etc. Question: what are the marks of an earnest disciple? Answer: an intense longing for the removal of sorrow and attainment of joy, and an intense aversion for all kinds of mundane pleasure. Question: what are the characteristics of instruction, that is Upadesha? Answer: the word Upadesha means near the place or seat. The Guru, who is the embodiment of that which is indicated by the terms Satta, Chitta and Ananda, that is in English we call as being, consciousness and bliss, prevents the disciple who, on account of his acceptance of the forms of the objects of the senses, has swerved from his true state and is consequently distressed and buffeted by joys and sorrows from continuing so, and establishes him in his own real nature without differentiation. Upadesa also means showing a distant object quite near. It is brought home to the disciple that reality which he believes to be distant and different from himself is near and not different from himself. Fourth question: if it be true that the Guru is one's own self, what is the principle underlying the doctrine which says that however learned a disciple may be, or whatever occult powers he may possess, he cannot attain self realization without the grace of the Guru? Maharshi replies, although in absolute truth the state of the Guru is that of oneself, it is very hard for the self, which has become the individual self, that we call as Jiva, through ignorance, to realize its true state or nature without the grace of the Guru. All mental concepts are controlled by the mere presence of the real Guru. If he were to say to one who arrogantly claims that he has seen the farther shore of the ocean of learning, or one who claims arrogantly that he can perform deeds which are well nigh impossible. Yes, You learned all that is to be learned, but have you learned to know yourself? And you, who are capable of performing deeds which are almost impossible, have you seen your own self? They will bow their heads and remain silent. Thus, it is evident that only by the grace of the Guru and by no other accomplishment is it possible to know one's own self. Question number 5. What are the marks of the Guru's grace? Maharshi replies, it is beyond words or thoughts. Question 6. If that is so, how is it that it is said that the disciple realizes his true state by the Guru's grace? Mercy replies, it is like the elephant which wakes up on seeing a lion in its dream. Even as the elephant wakes up at the mere sight of the lion, so too is it certain that the disciple wakes up from the sleep of ignorance into the wakefulness of true knowledge through the Guru's benevolent look of grace. Question number 7. What is the significance of the saying that the nature of the real Guru is that of the Supreme Lord, that is reality? Maharshi, in the case of the individual soul which desires to attain the state of true knowledge or the state of Godhood and with that object always practices devotion, the Lord, who is the witness of that individual soul and identical with it, comes forth when the individual's devotion has reached a mature stage in human form with the help of being consciousness bliss. His three natural features and name and form, which he also graciously assumes, and in the guise of blessing the disciple, absorbs him in himself. According to this doctrine, the Guru can truly be called the Lord. Question number 8. How then did some great persons attain knowledge without a Guru? Maharshi replies, to a few mature persons, the Lord shines at the light of knowledge and imparts awareness of the truth. Question number 9. What is the end of devotion and the path of Siddhanta, tradition? Maharshi replies, it is to learn the truth that all one's actions performed with unselfish devotion, with the aid of the three purified instruments, that is, body, speech, and mind, in the capacity of the servant of the Lord, become the Lord's action, and to stand forth free from the sense of I and mine. This is also the truth of what the Seva Siddhanti, that worshipper of Shiva, calls supreme devotion or living in the service of God. Question number 10. What is the end of the path of knowledge or Vedanta? Mercy replies, it is to know the truth that the I is not different from the absolute reality, Ishvara, and to be free from the feeling of being the doer. Question number 11. How can it be said that the end of both these paths is the same? Mercy replies, whatever the means, the destruction of the sense of I and mine is the goal, and as great And as these are interdependent, the destruction of either of them causes the destruction of the other. Therefore, in order to achieve that state of silence which is beyond thought and word, either the path of knowledge, which removes the sense of I, or the path of devotion, which removes the sense of mind, will suffice. So, there is no doubt that the end of the path of devotion and knowledge is one and the same. Question number 12. What is the mark of the ego? Mercy replies, the individual soul of the form of I is the ego. The self, which is of the nature of intelligence, has no sense of I, nor does the insentient body possess a sense of I. The mysterious appearance of a delusive ego between the intelligent and the insentient being the root cause of all these troubles, upon its destruction by whatever means, that which really exists will be seen as it is. This is called liberation. Now, question answers on the practice. First question. What is the method of practice? Maharshi replied, as the self of a person who tries to attain self-realization is not different from him, and as there is nothing other than or superior to him to be attained by him. Self-realization being only the realization of one's own nature, the seeker of liberation realizes without doubt or misconceptions his real nature by distinguishing the eternal from the transient and never swerves from his natural state. This is known as the practice of knowledge. This is the inquiry leading to self realization. Question number 2. Can this path of inquiry be followed by all aspirants? Maharshi replies, this is suitable only for ripe souls. The rest should follow different methods according to the state of their minds. See here, this point is to be further explained. See, for a ripe soul means his mind should be purified. His intellect must be purified. His ego must be subdued. So, almost mind, ego, intellect, and all are purified, and in reality, they merge with the soul. So, their nature is always sattvic. Their food is sattvic. Thoughts are sattvic. Dealings with other people is sattvic, pure, normal, full of truth. So this type of people are having these attributes, these qualities. They are ripe souls. So normal human beings, they do not fit into this practice. Question number 3. What are the other methods? Maharshi replies, they are stuti, japa, dhyana, yoga, jnana. Stuti means always contemplating on the good qualities of God. chanting the name of God, concentrating on the name and form of God, that is dhyana, and doing some pranayama, yogasana, and all, that is yoga, and then indulge into self inquiry, that is jnana. Now, Maharshi explains Stuti is singing the praises of the Lord with a great feeling of devotion. Japa is uttering the names of the gods or sacred mantras like Om, either mentally or verbally. Dhyana meditation denotes the repetition of the names etc. mentally with feelings of devotion. In this method, the state of the mind will be understood easily. For the mind does not become concentrated and diffused simultaneously. When one is in dhyana, it does not contact the objects of the senses, and when it is in contact with the object, it is not in dhyana. Therefore, those who are in this state can observe the vagaries of the mind then and there, and by stopping the mind from thinking other thoughts, fix it in dhyana. Perfection in dhyana is the state of abiding in the self. A meditation functions in an exceedingly subtle manner at the source of the mind. It is not difficult to perceive its rise and subsidence. The source of the breath is the same as that of the mind. Therefore, the subsidence of either leads effortlessly to that of the other. The practice of stilling the mind through breath control, pranayama, is called yoga. Then, fixing the mind on psychic centers such as the Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus. Yogis remain any length of time without awareness of their bodies. As long as this state continues, their appearance to be immersed in some kind of joy. But when the mind, which has become tranquil, becomes active again, it resumes its worldly thoughts. It is therefore necessary to train it with the help of practice like dhyana. Whenever it becomes externalized, it will then attain a state in which there is neither subsidence nor emergence. Jnana is the annihilation of the mind in which it is made to assume the form of the self through the constant practice of dhyana or inquiry. The extinction of the mind is the state in which there is a cessation of all efforts. Those who are established in this state never swerve from their true state. The terms silence and inaction refer to this state alone. Question number 4. Is the state of being still a state involving effort or effortless? Maharshi replies, it is not an effortless state of indolence. All mundane activities which are ordinarily called effort are performed with the aid of a portion of the mind and with frequent breaks. But the act of communion with the self or remaining still inwardly is intense activity which is performed with the entire mind and without break. Delusion or ignorance, which cannot be destroyed by any other act, is completely destroyed by this intense activity which is called silence. Question number 5. What is the nature of Maya, that is illusory world? Maya is that which makes us regard as non-existent of the self. The reality, which is always and everywhere present, all pervasive and self-luminous, and as existent of individual soul, the world and God, which have been conclusively proved to be non-existent at all times and places. Question number 6. As the self shines fully of its own accord, why is it not generally recognized like the other objects of the world by all persons? M- Maharshi replies, wherever particular objects are known, it is the self which has known itself in the form of those objects. For what is known as knowledge or awareness is only the potency of the self. The self is the only sentient object. There is nothing apart from the self. If there are such objects, they are all insentient and therefore cannot either know themselves or mutually know one another. It is because the self does not know its true nature in this manner that it seems to be immersed and struggling in the ocean of birth and death in the form of the individual soul. Question number 7. Although the Lord is all pervasive, it appears from passages like adorning him through his grace, that he can be known only through his grace. How then can the individual soul by its own effort attain self-realization in the absence of Lord grace? This is the question. Again, I repeat this question. Although the Lord is all pervasive, it appears, from passages like adorning him through his grace, that he can be known only through his grace. How then can the individual soul by its own effort attain self realization in the absence of Lord's grace? Very important question. Maharshi replies, as the Lord denotes the self and as grace means the Lord's presence or revelation, there is no time when the Lord remains unknown. If the light of the sun is invisible to the owl, it is only the fault of the bird and not of the sun. Similarly, can the unawareness by ignorant persons of the self, which is always of the nature of awareness, be other than their own fault? How can it be the fault of the self? It is because grace is of the very nature of the Lord that He is well known as the blessed grace. Therefore, the Lord, whose nature itself is grace, does not have to bestow His grace, nor is there any particular time for bestowing His grace. What now? Some explanation is needed for this grace. Actually, all our day-to-day worldly affairs are carried out by our mind and ego. Completely, the self is ignored and not brought into picture. So when ego and mind they are diverted towards the self, this state itself is grace. Because when our ego, intellect, and mind they are going towards the spiritual heart and merges with the self, self is what? Self is bliss, self is eternal peace. So that means we are in the state of grace. We are receiving grace. From where? from ourself. What is that self? That self is Brahma. The self is God. So we have to understand certain things. Grace is not coming from someone from outside. Grace is that is our self is the grace. Our self showers grace on whom? Because whom means we always take this body, mind, intellect, ego, like that. So when all these are vanished, what is left? Left is what? Self. And self is nothing but bliss, peace, grace. So these are the. Okay, next question is question number 7. Question number 6. As the self shines fully of its own accord, why is it not generally recognized like the other objects of the world by all persons? Very important question. Maharshi replies, wherever particular objects are known, it is the self which has known itself in the form of those objects. For what is known as knowledge or awareness is only the potency of the self. The self is the only sentient object. There is nothing apart from the self. If there are such objects, they are all insentient and therefore cannot either know themselves or mutually know one another. It is because the self does not know its true nature in this manner that it seems to be immersed and struggling in the ocean of birth and death in the form of the individual soul. See, mind, ego, and intellect, all these completely act as the veil for the true self. Question number 7. Although the Lord is all pervasive, it appears from passages like adorning him through his grace that he can be known only through his grace. This I have already explained. Now, question number 8. What part of the body is the abode of the self? That is very, very important. Dear friends, self and God are same. God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Similarly, self is also omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. So, something is infinite, cannot be confined in a finite object like our body. So the self is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. But for understanding, we say that self resides in our spiritual heart, which is said to be on the right side. Our this physical heart is on the left side, our in our chest, and the spiritual heart is said to be on the right side. But actually, there is nothing like that spiritual heart and all. But for understanding, this is assumed like that. What part of the body is the abode of the self? Very important point. The heart on the right side of the chest is generally indicated. Indicated. Just see, Maharshi is emphasizing indicated. This is because we usually point to the right side of the chest when we refer to ourselves. Some say that the Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus, is the abode of the self. But if that were true, the head should not fall forward when we go to sleep or faint. Question number 9. What is the nature of the heart? The sacred texts describing it say between the two nipples below the chest and above the abdomen there are six organs of different colors, one of them resembling the bud of a water lily and situated two digits to the right is the heart. It is inverted and within it is a tiny orifice which is the seat of dense darkness, ignorance, full of desire. All the psychic nerves, nadis, depend upon it. It is the abode of the vital force, the mind, and the light of consciousness. Question number 10. Why do thoughts of many objects arise in the mind even when there is no contact with external objects? And Maharshi replies, I have taken up the topic of vasanas. I have given one video on vasanas. These vasanas are the cause of thoughts. Remember, I have given only one video. I will give one or two more. So this you can listen carefully and you will understand why these thoughts are arising continuously. So Mercy replies, all such thoughts are due to latent tendencies. Latent tendencies, propensities, or subtle impressions, or simply we call them as vasanas. They appear only to the individual consciousness which has forgotten its real nature and becomes externalized. Whenever particular things are perceived, the inquiry who is it that sees them should be made. They will then disappear at once. Question number 11. How do the triple factors known and knowledge, which are absent in deep sleep and samadhi, manifest themselves in the self in the states of waking and dreaming? Mercy reply. From the self there arise in succession, number one, reflected consciousness, chidabhasa, which is a kind of luminosity. Second, the individual consciousness or the seer or the first concept. Third, phenomena, that is the world. Question number 12. Since the self is free from the notion of knowledge and ignorance, how can it be said to pervade the entire body in the shape of sensuous sentience or to impart sentience to the senses? Means life. You can say sentience means life, living. Maharshi replies, wise men say that there is a connection between the source of the various psychic nerves and the self. That this is the knot of the heart, that the connection between the sentient and the insentient will exist until this is cut asunder with the aid of true knowledge. That just as the subtle and invisible force of electricity travels through wires and does many wonderful things, so the force of the self also travels, remain through the psychic nerves and pervading the entire body, imparts sentience to the senses, and that if this knot is cut, the self will remain as it is always is, without any attributes. Question number 13. How can there be a connection between the self, which is pure knowledge, and the triple factor, which are relative knowledge? Maharshi replies, this is in a way like the working of a cinema as shown below. Cinema show the lamp inside the apparatus, self, the self. Left side, cinema show the lens in front of the lamp. Right side is self under second point, the pure sattvic mind close to the self. Cinema show, underneath cinema show. Third point, the film which is long series of separate photos. Self. Third part, the stream of latent tendencies consisting of subtle thoughts. Cinema show. Fourth point, the lens, the light passing through it, and the lamp, which together form the focused light. Self. Fourth point, the mind, the illumination of it, and the self, which together form the seer or the individual self. Fifth, under cinema show, the light passing through the lens and falling on the screen. The light of the self emerging from the mind through the senses and falling on the world, the various forms and names appearing as the objects perceived in the light of the world. Seventh, the mechanism which sets the film in motion on the self side. Seventh point is the divine law manifesting the latent tendencies of the mind. This point I will show in the video because by just telling is not clear.